Yes, welcome to the game design course. I will tell you just a little bit about myself. So I have been professionally designing games, separate from designing games as a hobby, but professionally designing games for about 6 years now. I have put out several different games that have been published so far. The first game that was published that had my name actually on it was Vikings Raid and Conquer, a licensed game put out by the company High Roller Games. It was one of the first companies I worked for in the board game industry. And since then, I've put out several other games, most of them under the company title for the company I currently work for, which is OOMM Games. And honestly, I've never looked back from once I made the switch into this industry. It was a huge challenge to do, but something that I've always been excited in having done, and always been happy that I managed to do this. That being said, there is a huge learning curve in this industry. So let's see what we can do about trying to help all of you guys in helping design your own games, and hopefully try and find your own way into this industry as well. So on that note, let's just get right into things today. And I'm going to start out by going over the four main parts that we're going to have for this session. So we're going to have, sorry, just a sec, something decided not to pop back up on me. There we go. So we're going to have, over the next 4 weeks here, the 4 sessions are, first one, concept prototype. So taking an idea and making your first prototype. So we're going over all the different aspects of what makes a game, and trying to put all those different pieces together. So we're going over writing the game, making and designing the game, playing it and breaking it. And a lot of people ask why on earth you're trying to break your game. And so that's one of the biggest things that we're actually going to be getting to later on in the course here. Next week, we're going over game design on a budget. So how to rapidly iterate through your designs, the different free softwares that are available to you to use, as well as other free resources that you can pick up online. And these are going to help make your designing a whole lot easier. And the biggest thing with it is trying to work within what you already know, not trying to expand out too much, unless it's something that's going to be very, very specifically helpful for what you're trying to do. Part 3 is all about turning your prototype into a professional looking prototype. So how to actually do this from home, or how to use other resources that are available, such as GameCrafter, MakePlayingCards.com, things like these. Going over what the creative triangle really is, and going over how to actually properly talk to artists without insulting them. And then the first part is a part that a lot of people are really, really interested in, which is whether or not you should be self-publishing or contacting a publisher, and what's really all the hidden costs and different things involved in doing both of these. Over the course of this course as well, we're going to be going over multiple key concepts within game design. So creative paralysis, which is the things that stop you from designing and how to address them. The KISS method, fail faster. Why do you want to fail, and why do you want to do it faster? The development pyramid, how to find your own focus within design, and how to properly count all the costs involved in your design. So, a common issue that causes creative paralysis. So I'm going to open the floor up at this point and just ask, is there anything that people can think of that would be a common issue for creative paralysis? And you can unmute your mic right now and just shout out what you think would be a common issue of creative paralysis.
Too many potential interests in what you'd like to do.
Too many potential interests? Yep.
Idea too big, and so it's really costly.
It feels too big. Yeah.
Learning about too many mechanics.
Too many mechanics, so too much involved in it.
Replayability.
Sorry, what was that one?
Replayability.
The replayability. If people are going to want to pick up the game and play it again, yes, that's definitely a concern. Let's do 2 more. If anyone has any more.
Unoriginal, or it's too much like something else.
Unoriginal, yeah, that's something that people worry about, definitely.
Worried you're making the wrong choices up front and you're just going to be wasting your time.
Worried you're making the wrong choices and you're wasting your time. Yes, that's actually a really good one. Believe it or not, none of those are actually the top 3 reasons for creative paralysis. What if somebody steals my idea? This is actually the top reason for creative paralysis. The reason being that people think they have such a good idea that someone else is going to take it. They're going to do it better than me. They're going to get to market first. They're going to make money off my idea. Well, here's the thing. If you never make it, what's it matter? You have to make it first. And in the game industry, people borrow ideas from each other all the time. This is how you get deck building games. Someone came up with the original idea of a deck builder, and now there's an entire genre of deck building games. But are they exactly like that original deck builder? Usually not. So you can't really waste your time trying to figure out how you're going to protect your idea so that no one else is going to steal it, which is one of the top questions that I actually get asked. How do I protect my idea so no one else can steal it? You can't. So you don't waste your time with it. Instead, you make your idea, and that itself is the protection. If you're the first one to get it out there, that alone provides protection to that idea. So make your idea, and then someone can't steal that specific idea. And if you never make it, it's always just going to be an idea. The next one, what if people don't understand what I've made? So if someone doesn't understand, or if the majority of your audience even doesn't understand what you've made and what you're trying to have people play through, the reality is that you just haven't conveyed it. You haven't explained it. So you then really need to go back to your idea and ask yourself, why is this idea important to me? What's similar about this to something else, and how do they explain it? Is this even popular, or is it such a niche concept that people aren't understanding it because they don't even understand the concept that the game is built around? So if people don't understand it, the problem isn't with them, the problem is with you. So refine your idea more, spend more time figuring out how people can understand your idea. I have so many things I want to do. This was actually something a couple people mentioned here. So many different ideas, so many different designs they're working on, all of these things. Great. That's perfect. This is actually one of the first steps in really being a game designer, is having so many ideas you don't know what to do with them. This is perfect. This is where you want to be. But what is the minimum product that you need for the game to work? When you strip everything out of it, take as much out as you can, and the game still works, that's your minimum viable product. That is the minimum of what you need to create the game. At that point, once you've taken every single thing out and the game still works, then you can start adding things in. Do people still enjoy it at that point? Add a little bit more in. Do people still enjoy it? Is it different enough from something else at that point? Once people enjoy what you have, even if you have 100 more ideas, stop there. The rest of them can be added on as expansions later on, and that gives you something to keep people interested in. The more ideas you have to come out in the future, the longer your product will last on the market. So, keep it simple, stupid. The KISS method. So, I've heard X program is the best to use. Okay, maybe in a particular aspect of design, a particular program is the best to use. Have you ever used it? If not, why waste your time learning it? If you have something you're already comfortable with, use what you're comfortable with. Keep it simple. That way, if you're using what you're comfortable with, you'll be able to make something faster. Complex games are the best. Complex games take hours, not only to play, but to learn. And the reality is, the people that have the money to buy your games don't always have the time to play complex games. So reduce the complexity as much as you can, and you'll actually have a bigger audience for your game. And at the same time, you'll be done designing the game faster. The more complex a game you're making, the longer it takes to make. So make the game simpler. This doesn't mean make a simple game, but make the game simpler. You can always add more in later. I want to get this done by Y time period. Okay, do you have a really good reason for that? Otherwise, if you don't have an incredibly good reason to try and get this done by a specific time period, all you're doing is adding undue stress to yourself. Stress will prevent you from completing your design. So keep it simple. Keep the time periods off the table unless you absolutely need them. Look at time periods once you have a finished product. But until you have time periods, avoid them. Fail faster. So the whole idea of fail faster is the quicker you fail, the quicker you're going to make the design better. So you want to get to the point of failing in your design. You want to find the points that break your design, that make it that something doesn't work at all. When you get to that, don't be sad, don't be upset. You need to celebrate that, because now you've found how you can improve it, and you got to that point even quicker, hopefully, than the last time. The quicker you get to these failing points, the quicker you'll be able to iterate your design and make a better game. Development pyramid. We'll be going over this a lot more in 2 weeks from now. But essentially with the development period, the whole idea is that you have 3 things that you always have to juggle. The time involved in making something, the quality of what you're trying to make, and the cost involved in making it. But the reality is, you can only ever accurately choose two. So as an example, if you want to keep the cost as low as possible, but try and have the quality as high as possible in what you're doing, then time can't be a factor. It's going to take a long period of time, and there's no way around that. But if you need it to take a short period of time, and you need to keep the cost down, well then, quality is also going to suffer, and there's nothing you can do about it. The whole idea of the development pyramid is that you choose two aspects of the pyramid, and that's all you can ever focus on. The third one will suffer no matter what you do. And that is key in any aspect of design that you're working on. And then finally, finding your focus. What do you wish to accomplish? So this is going to be involving making a thorough list of what you want to do. This can be writing out all the ideas that you have, and then summarizing it down to what's actually needed to complete the game. So what's needed to complete the game, that's what you need to accomplish. All the ideas you have in excess of that will actually slow your design process down if you include them at the beginning. So you need to remove as much as possible to be able to focus on what you're doing. Counting the costs. So what are the true costs in releasing a product? So this is a question that a lot of people ask themselves. How much is it actually going to cost to release this game? And the reality is a whole lot more than you think. No matter how much you plan it out, no matter how much research you've done, it's going to cost more than you think. So spend the time planning out as much as you can. That's going to be financial costs, time costs, energy costs, all of that when you start your design process, because you need to evaluate for yourself whether or not this is something that you truly want to invest in, or if it is in the end going to be too much for you. If it's going to be too much for you, this is the time to cut out now, because if you get partway through and then you can't complete your design, you're going to feel bad about that for a long time. So count the cost beforehand so that you can decide for yourself whether or not it's actually truly worth it. So before I go on to the next part, does anyone have questions on this so far?
I have a question on the development pyramid.
Yep.
Can that shift throughout the course of the project? So let's say, for example, you start with an idea, I'm going to let time and quality dictate, and I'm not going to worry about the cost. And then later in the process, okay, I've finished my design and all that. Now I can focus on cost. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Each stage of your design, you'll need to essentially reevaluate your design pyramid for it. So for instance, when you're looking at your initial design time and that, you're going through your initial concepts, you're going to have a very open pyramid. Realistically, you're not even going to be looking at it too much at that point, which means you're not going to be considering anything on the pyramid yet when you're first coming up with your concepts and ideas. Once you have your initial concepts and ideas down, and you're trying to plan out how you're going to make the game and different things like that, that's when you're going to start looking at, well, how can I make my prototype cheaply, or am I going to invest in these higher quality parts to make a really good looking prototype right now? Am I going to do this on the weekends or every day after work? How am I going to do it? What time am I going to dedicate? Different things like that. So at that point, you're going to reevaluate it. When you get further in your design process again, oh, I need artwork. artwork itself is an entire design pyramid that you need to evaluate. So every time you reach a new step in the design process, it's good to take a quick look over that design pyramid again to realize for yourself what are the two key factors for you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so going to move on here. So theme. What is the theme? So not all games have a theme. Think of checkers. It's completely themeless. There's many games that are on the market today that realistically don't have a theme, or the theme doesn't actually mean much for the game. This is actually okay depending on the game. Sometimes you have an idea for a game but don't even have a theme in mind yet, and that is perfectly fine. Test your design, test your idea. You might, as you're going through, come up with a theme concept that seems more fitting for the design you've developed, and that in turn can end up affecting how you design the game from that point forward. This here is a perfect example of my game No Escape. When I was originally starting the design process, this was what I was using to test with. It's literally just dots on a page that you moved across. It means absolutely nothing, and that was fine. The theme, however, does determine your audience. Most games are going to need a theme. The theme itself actually helps people to understand a game and attracts a large portion of the audience to your game. So it affects how easy it is to learn. So for instance, if you have a game where you're running from an explosion, it makes sense in that game for having a rule that you can't turn around because you're running from an explosion. It just makes logical sense to the players at that point. So good examples: science fiction, fantasy, cute as a theme. Think exploding kittens or different things like that. They're very cute themed. And that itself helps people to be interested in the game even before they know anything about the game. So here is the example of the finished artwork for the game No Escape. So you can see how it evolved over time, and the theme got added on of a science fiction style space station that you're going through. So the objective, what are your players trying to do? Are they playing together in a cooperative game? Are they working against each other in a competitive game? Are they on teams or semi-cooperative? What really is happening in this game? How do the players win? How do they lose? Are they working towards different objectives, similar objectives? How is all of this tracked? Does the objective that you have actually match the theme that you're working with too? Because if they don't, this alone is going to be a point where you're going to lose players. They're not going to understand the rules, no matter how well written they are, if the objective of the game doesn't match the theme of the game. So these are two aspects that have to mesh together for people to understand what they're reading in the rules the first time they pull a belt box. So again, the objective will determine your audience. There are a lot of people that don't like competitive games. There's also a lot of people that don't like cooperative games. So depending on the objective of the game and how things work overall in the game is going to determine who you're making the game for. So style and actions. So what can the players do? What will they use to do it? What other pieces are needed? So you've designed all the different aspects of what players are going to be doing. They need cards to do this stuff. Okay, well, how are they playing those cards? Are they playing those cards onto a tableau? Are they playing them onto a board? Are they playing them in front of other players on their playing mat? What is needed for the key aspects of the game to work? If you have a board in your game, what's it even used for? There are many games that I can think of where they have boards in the games, and the boards serve no purpose except to organize things. But realistically, without the board, the game would play perfectly fine. It's not needed for the game itself. It makes the game easier, though, and it helps with the theme of the game. Progress tracking. So how are people going to win? How is this tracked? Is this tracked through collecting stuff? Is this tracked by eliminating other players? Is this tracked by what means? And so essentially, looking through all the styles and actions, you need to ask yourself some key questions. What do people do? Yes, like cribbage. That's actually a good example. So with cribbage, the victory and actions are tracked by moving your peg along the board. So what do people do? How is this tracked? Why do they do a particular action? What's the purpose for it in the game? Does it even have a major purpose on the game overall? Would they want to do that action? When do they do these actions? Is it something that they're going to be able to do at any point during the game, just on their turn in reaction to things? Is it important overall? How do they do the action? How do they record that they've completed the action? Sometimes it's just as simple as I discard my card. It's recorded. Sometimes it's more complicated than that. And through all the actions that are being done, is it just yourself that's involved with them, or are you interacting with the other players while you're doing them? So these are all different things that seem pretty simple at first, but you need to keep them in mind. The more layers you add on to your game, are all of those layers actually working together? Balancing your game. So this is actually going to be something that for most games is actually going to be one of the biggest time sinks for you, is how to properly balance the game once you have all the key concepts together. So spreadsheets are quite commonly used for balance. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that they actually only take you so far. In the end, nothing replaces a player's feeling for the game. A game can be completely mathematically balanced, but if the player doesn't feel it's balanced, they're not going to play it. There's actually many, many card games that come out, some of them online, some of them physical, where the cards themselves are not balanced against each other, and this is on purpose. Because when the cards were originally completely balanced against each other, people didn't find it as fun, or people found that it seemed unbalanced, even when it really wasn't. So you need to keep in mind that a spreadsheet will only take you so far in your balancing. Playtesting. So this is one of the absolute most important things in game design, is making sure you playtest. So this goes along with making sure once you've balanced your game out, making sure people actually feel like it's balanced. Also testing every single aspect of your design as you go through the design process. There is literally no way to over test your game. You may test it a few hundred times, you may test it a few thousand times. In the end, you have not over tested it, because no matter how many times you test it, once the game is released and printed and published, it will be played many, many, many more times than you ever tested it, or you ever had tests done for it. And they will still find things that you missed and that they question. So there is no way to over test your game. So test it as much as possible with as many people as possible. After every single test, ask yourself, what went well with this? What didn't go well? Did the game break? Why did it break? Why didn't it break? What did you do well in the last iteration that you did? What did you do poorly in it? Do you need to step back several steps? If you change something, will it fix the issue from the previous test, or will it create more tests, more issues? So you need to ask yourself these questions once you finish a round of testing. And break it till you make it. There is absolutely nothing that is sacred in your design. It doesn't matter how good you feel the design is. It doesn't matter how much you think a particular aspect needs to be in the game. If people don't enjoy it, you need to cut it. So I have a question here. How drastic is too drastic to change between playtests? So this is a really good question. You don't want to make huge sweeping changes to your design in between playtests unless there is something that is just not working at all and you need to find a completely new way to go around it. Because in the end, if you make too drastic a test, or too drastic a change, it's hard to tell exactly what is or isn't working the next time you test it. Incremental tests are always the best way to go because it'll help you get better information back to test for the next time, better information to improve your design. Okay, so I want to thank Jay Cormier, who put out the Fail Faster Game Design Journal, for letting me use this. We're going to do a quick little idea here. And so if everyone's had the chance to print out the sheets or have them up on your screen, bring up the sheet Design Challenge. So what we're going to do is a quick little design challenge for everyone here, where we're actually going to come up with the three major things here: mechanics, themes, and constraints, in very different orders here. So the first one, we're going to do this 4 times. For the first one, we're going over just mechanics. So the idea is we come up with 3 completely random mechanics based on this table. From those 3 mechanics, we need to come up with a game concept. Once we have that game concept, we need a theme that matches it. And while you're doing that, if you come up with any additional ideas or additional mechanics that you think would be fitting in for that particular concept, there's a spot at the bottom. For the second one, we're going to do 2 mechanics and a theme. Third one, mechanic, theme, and constraint. And then the final one, a mechanic and 2 constraints. So we're going to go through each of these as a group, and I'm going to set a timer on my phone here because we're going to spend 5 minutes on each of these, so 20 minutes in total, where as a group we're going to go through this. So I'm going to roll the handy dandy little dice that I have here and tell everyone what mechanics they're working with. So the first mechanic that everyone is going to work with here is variable player powers. The second mechanic that everyone is using is battle cards. And the third is partnerships. So having the 3 mechanics that we're using, try in the next 5 minutes to come up with a game concept and a theme, starting now. And if you have any questions or comments, just unmute yourself and ask them out right now.
Can you give a brief description of what these 3 mechanics are?
Sure. So first off, we did, sorry, I didn't even write them down. I should have actually written down what 3 we're doing.
Variable player powers.
Yeah, so variable player powers. Variable player powers is essentially that people have different powers that they're working with. Not everyone starts the same, and not everyone has the same abilities and powers throughout the game. Okay, the next one that I did was
Battle cards and then partnerships.
Yeah, so battle cards and partnerships. So battle cards, the whole idea there is it's your entire combat system, and a combat system will be required for this particular mechanic, is done entirely through cards. And then the last one, partnerships. So there's a couple different ways that partnerships work. The first one is that you have a partner that you're working with. The second one is that you're finding a way throughout the game to form partnerships, and you must form a partnership in order to complete your objective. So these are actually 3 harder ones from the list. Just going to figure out the next ones for us all here while we're doing this. Okay, you've got just under 2 minutes left. So something to keep in mind as you're going through this as well. This is just a very, very quick concept that you're coming up with. This is essentially the kind of thing that you're using when you're stuck on an idea, you're not really sure what to do. So exercise your mind with something else. This is a perfect way to exercise your mind in a way, being creative, but getting your mind off of where you're stuck. One minute left. And that's time right there. So I'm going to choose a couple random people here. And I'd like you, if you're comfortable with it, to just unmute yourself and tell us what your quick game concept you came up with is. Shadrach, if you're comfortable unmuting yourself and letting us know.
Okay, sure. Probably a very overblown idea. The theme was Revolutionary War, and I was thinking it was like 3+ players play different factions of the Revolutionary War: the Loyalists, British Army, Native Americans, the Continental Congress, the State Militia, the Continental Army, and maybe even the British Crown and Parliament. And they each have personal objectives that they have to try to meet to win the game, and they can then partner up to meet those objectives.
Excellent. That's a very good game concept that you came up with in 5 minutes based off 3 completely random starting points. Chris, if you're comfortable, could you unmute yourself and let us know your thought? Okay. Laura, if you're comfortable with it, would you share your thought on the game concept you came up with?
Okay, my game is a 2-player co-op game where you play as heroes with turn abilities, and you receive action cards and ability cards that you use against a programmed card AI.
Excellent. So as you guys can all see here, these 2 game concepts that were just described are both completely different from each other, but they both started with exactly the same basis and exactly the same starting point. So this is one of the biggest things with game design that a lot of people forget when they're moving into it, and when they have different ideas that they want to work with, is that it doesn't matter what the starting point is for people. Everyone will take it in a different direction. And so if people are concerned about, well, what if someone steals my idea? The biggest thing that everyone has to remember is that everyone will take a concept in a completely different direction than how you're going to do it. So the next thing that we're going to do here is, for the second one, we're going to have 2 mechanics and a theme. So what I've rolled up here already is area enclosure, fantasy, and press your luck. And I'm going to give you guys 5 more minutes. And then this time, if we could have, while it's going on, the first 2 people that volunteer will have as giving us their game concept this time. Summary of the mechanics, definitely. So co-op, so cooperative gameplay, you are working with someone else or with multiple other people to complete the objective. Usually co-op games, all the players are working together to complete a single objective. And I just realized that I'm reading section 3, not section 2. So let me read section 2 for you again. Area enclosure, you're trying to surround a section with either your color or be the last one to do something in a section. Often area enclosure games can be thought of as dot-to-dot games for a lot of them, where you're trying to drop between different dots enclosing an area. So that's the most simple version of them. They get a lot more complicated from there. Press your luck. You have the option of taking more actions to do something, but every time you take more actions, you have a higher chance of failure. You choose when you stop taking actions. If you stop taking actions before the failure point, you succeed at everything you've accomplished. If you hit the failure point, you lose everything that you've accomplished.
So I think I missed the theme though. You said area enclosure, press your luck, and what's the theme?
Fantasy.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what the area enclosure is?
So area enclosure is trying to surround a specific area or section, usually on a board, either a general board or your own board, and you gain control of it by surrounding it. Yes, like Blockus, that would be a good example. And if you guys are finding this one hard as well, you guys are going to love the next one. It's going to be the easiest one. At least in my opinion. Okay, with about 2 minutes left, do we have anyone who think they'd be willing to explain their game concept when the time's up? Perfect, thank you. Excellent. Thank you, guys. minute left. Perfect, perfect. Glad to see that you have more games you want to make. Okay, and that is time right there. So, Stefan, if you could describe your game concept to us.
Yeah, so the concept is you are the last dragon catcher hired to make the land safe and fence in and herd dragons. The more dragons you capture, the higher your reward, but be careful, the more you capture, the angrier they become.
That's an amazing concept, and that sounds like a really interesting game to play. Thank you. Okay, Michael, could you share your concept with us?
So coincidentally, and you know it's coincidence because we are in totally different areas, mine is also dragon related. I called it Dragon Brood, and the idea is you recruit different dragons to your brood. You're like a dragon lord or something, and you're trying to find viable nesting grounds to grow your brood. You have to surround these nesting grounds in order to capture them, but you also have to build the nests while doing so. So you collect materials to do that through resources, drop those off, and you press your luck by the amount of resources you're contributing to the nest. So you run the risk of, you know, if there's dice, I don't know if I would add the mechanic of dice rolling to press your luck or how I would do it, but basically you would, there would be some sort of press your luck element where you could lose all of your progress trying to capture a nest.
Excellent, excellent. So very similar ideas that both of you came up with, which is actually indicative of the very kinds of mechanics and the theme involved. And that's actually one of the interesting things that section 2 here was all about, is that when you're going with a specific theme and adding those mechanics in, that can actually end up lending your designs to being very similar. The final gameplay itself would end up actually being quite different. But starting with a specific theme and some specific mechanics that you're working with, those constraints can actually cause you to have a narrower design focus overall. Perfect. So we're going to move on to the third one of these. So the third one here is what you're working with. So first off, the mechanic is co-op, so cooperative. Everyone is working together to complete the same objective. Your theme, pirates. And the constraint that you have to work with. So this is something that must be incorporated into your design and is a key aspect of the design itself. It uses a hex map system. You have 5 minutes to come up with your game concept now. And again, if we could have some people, if they're willing, to volunteer to let us know what their designs are, I think everyone is going to be even more surprised with the outcome of this particular one. Well, if you're having a hard time with this one, think of similar style games, games that you've already played that use whatever it is that you're finding the hardest to work with. So if you're having trouble with the hex map constraint, think of other games that you know of or that you've even played that use a hex map system. If you're having trouble with the Pirates theme, think again of other games that use the Pirates theme. So use other games as a basis to start with in your design, and then work with there to make your concept. And sometimes that's the thing. You feel like you roll it up when you're doing this and you feel like every idea you come up with has been done before. That is actually something that is actually part of the challenge then for yourself mentally as you're trying to come through this, is thinking, okay, so everything I can think of has been done before. So what stands out? What even tiny aspect stands out that has not been done before, and focus on that tiny aspect of things. One of the most interesting things about game designs is that when you start really looking at them close, for the games that have similar themes, similar play styles, some things like that, sometimes it's even down to just similar mechanics. When you start analyzing them really closely, you can actually see that they are very, very, very similar games in the end, and that it's just one single aspect ends up being a key aspect, but one single aspect that ends up diverging in a different direction. Yes, Pirate Bay is a good game. Okay, that's time. So do we have a couple volunteers here? Perfect. And before you you unmute yourself, do we have one more volunteer? Okay, perfect. So I'm hoping I'm not slaughtering your name. Is it Asen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. My idea was you work as a team of pirates trying to find a crew of pirates trying to treasure hunt and trying to find the secret map of where the secret treasure is on the X on the map. And you fight other pirates and other Empire, Navy, and natives. And so it's a co-op, like a searching game.
Cool. That's a great idea. Okay. And Laura, can you tell us ours? Or tell us yours?
It's called Pirate Bay. It's a pandemic style game where you play as digital pirates, pirating content from around the web and traveling around the mainframe. You have to avoid government restrictions and virus scanners to get to the best score.
That is great. That takes the whole idea of a pirate theme and takes it in a direction that is completely different than what most people would expect. So very, very good job with that. Thank you. So what you might have noticed about those two games is that they were actually quite different. Most of your designs are probably going to be fairly similar, but there is going to be one or two for these particular quick concept ideas that are just going to be completely divergent from everyone else. And this is exactly what I was hoping would happen with this one, actually, is that we had someone that came up with a completely divergent idea. That's exactly what I was looking for in talking about with this. The reason being that when you have something that seems so simple and easy when you're working through a process like this, what you need to do is try and figure out, well, if it's so simple and easy, what can I do that would make it different than what other people would do? So try and look at the different aspects of it, and that will create a unique game. So the last one that we're going to do here, so the three constraints that or the three things you're working with, the mechanic is worker placement. The constraint is none of the pieces can have language on them. So the only written information must be in the rule book. And your second constraint is the entire game is story driven. You have 5 minutes. Not a problem at all, Amanda. This is actually, I'm going to, once we're done this one, I'm going to go over why these four things are actually a really good way for you to help your design process. What is worker placement? So worker placement is the whole idea of you have a limited number of actions or resources, and you have to assign those actions or resources to do a specific thing. So in games that use worker placement often, usually there's actually a large variety of different actions you can take during a turn, but you have a limited number of choices you're able to make. So if there's 10 actions that are a possibility, let's say you only have 2 or 3 workers to assign to which actions you're going to be doing. That's perfectly fine if you don't have anything. This one is actually the most challenging one. Even though they're all aspects, I specifically chose these ones to all be aspects that people would be able to more easily grasp in general. This one itself is a harder one because of the double constraints. Story-driven worker placement is definitely a challenge. And I will admit I chose this for a specific reason, which I'll get into in a bit. Just under 2 minutes left for everyone. Story is definitely a hard one to incorporate. By itself, story-driven games is something that that you come up with. You can come up with ideas for fairly easily all on its own. But when it's something that has to be paired with other things, it creates quite a challenge to be able to do. And time. So, how many people were not able to come up with an idea for that one? If we can just get people just quickly indicating in the chat. So that one was definitely harder for a lot of you. And that was actually the point of that one. That one was supposed to be very hard. So why was that one supposed to be so hard? It's because it's not normally how we design. This is the kind of thing that if you're designing for a contest that you work within quite a bit. But when you're designing for yourself, when you're designing for something fun, for something that you have a cool idea for that you want to eventually take to market, normally you're not doing something like that. However, one of the things that this does, and that you might have realized as you were doing all 4 of these, is that it really helped give you a whole bunch of new ideas. I'm sure that several of you have a lot more ideas for different things that you want to develop now. And that's perfect. That's actually exactly what this is for. One of the things that this particular page here is most useful for, and why I got permission to give it to all of you, is the whole idea that at some point in time, you're going to get stuck on your design. And you are not going to be able to figure out how to move your design forward. It happens to everyone at some point in time. The biggest thing that you can do to help you when you get stuck is to design something else. Start coming up with a new concept. This will help you come up with a new concept initially, help those creative juices going, help you to start going again in the design process. It may even get you to the point of, oh, this thing that I just made for this game, that's exactly what I need to make my other game work, and you're ready to go again. So when you get stuck, don't fret. Just put it aside temporarily with the entire plan of coming back to it and work on something else until you've worked through the issue. So I see some of you had some pretty cool ideas here. So I'm not going to read them out because I brought out the points I wanted to on here, and we don't have a lot of time left on here. So I'm just going to start moving ahead again. So write out your idea. So on the last sheet that everyone got sent, which is the design idea, that's what this is for. This is to help you to organize your idea when you have an initial concept for a game and you're not quite sure where to go with it yet. So write out your idea. What are the players going to do? How are they going to do it? What game pieces are you going to need? So write all of this information down and start organizing your thoughts with it. Start making your very first prototype. So what are you going to make this out of? Literally anything that's lying around the house. This is your first initial prototype, just to make sure it works. And you need to make this prototype. You need to make the junkiest, worst looking prototype you absolutely can so that you can get it down and start physically manipulating it. Once you start physically manipulating your prototype, you'll see things that you didn't even realize when you were coming up with the idea. So put something together. Use cereal boxes, cardstock, flashcards, random game bits, coins. Literally does not matter what it is. Find anything that'll work for your idea, start throwing it together, and play it out by yourself for the first time. So start out with a solo test. The game is going to suck. Be prepared for that. It is going to be horrible. Oh, just a second. Michael, I see, yeah, you have your hand raised there.
Yeah, so this is intimidating for me. This is the part where it already starts to get intimidating, right? Because before we're playing a game and just coming up with concepts out of nowhere and, you know, whether or not we're going to use them. But at the moment that I'm like, actually, you know, oh, okay, I'm going to actually start a project. That's when it instantly is like that block comes, right? So at the beginning of the meeting when we talked about we feel these hindrances, this is where it starts to happen for me. It's like there's an importance placed on it and therefore I can't make decisions. So how do we get over that? Do we just kick ourselves in gear and just say it doesn't matter? Just pick a mechanic, pick a theme and go?
Essentially, yeah. If you're having trouble, you have an idea that you want to develop and you're having trouble actually starting to make that particular game, even for the very first horrible prototype. If you're having trouble even making that very first horrible prototype, don't make that prototype. Make a different one. But start.
Okay, I like that. That makes sense. Just get busy working, and maybe
get busy working.
If you feel like there's something more important, you don't want to screw it up, you put that off to the side. Do something smaller in the meantime.
Yeah, get busy working. Get yourself used to doing it. Get yourself comfortable doing it. Because sometimes the block is that we're just not comfortable doing it. So just get comfortable doing it first, and then you'll feel better about doing it. The other thing to keep in mind is that you are making junk right now. You are not making the Sistine Chapel. You are making complete and utter junk. So you need to accept that, and you need to realize that it is not something good you're making right now. It is literally just pieces thrown together. Making something good comes later.
Okay, I like that. Knowing that it's going to suck takes the pressure off, so we're good.
Okay. So once you've made your prototype, once you've made your junk, start out with solo tasks. Shadrach, that's a perfect point. Suck and be ugly as hell. Yes, that is exactly what you want. So start out doing solo tasks. You're playing it by yourself. You're not showing other people this piece of junk you've designed. That's not what you're doing. You're trying to make sure that what you've thrown together is actually even a game, because it might not even be that at this point. It might be literally junk, but you won't know that until you put it together and try it. So throw it all together, use whatever you need to make the most basic of basic components, and try it out for the very first time yourself. Try it out several times yourself. Break it horribly until it doesn't even function again. Figure out what needs to be changed and try again. Keep playing it that way until you can play all the way through multiple times without something breaking. Once you've gotten to that point, you're ready to go on to the next, which is, if you're not comfortable showing people this junky design you've made, pretty it up a bit. And then start playing with friends. And by prettying it up a bit, we're not talking spending big money here. This is like spending a couple bucks on your design. Go to the dollar store, as was said. Buy a paper cardstock. Raid a game that you have just for the parts. You're not spending money making this. Or if you are spending any, you're only spending a few dollars to make it just at the most basic playable point for other people. You're playing it with your friends and family so that they can break the game. And keep playing it with them until they're tired of it and the game doesn't break anymore. But something that you have to keep in mind is that your friends and your family, they will always have an honesty factor that you have to keep in mind. And that honesty factor is that no matter how honest they're trying to be with you, no matter how much they want to give you the best advice possible, they don't want to hurt your feelings. And so they will always filter themselves, even if they don't even realize they're doing it. We have a lot of comments in group chat about how to make some prototypes here. Believe it or not, all of those we'll be going over next week. So the last point here is try to meet up with other game designers. So good ways to do this is go on to Facebook groups and find game designers in your area. I'd say go to conventions, but not right now. Just try and find ways to meet up with other designers. Sometimes at this point in time, that could even be a Skype-based meeting. Yes, there is homework for the next workshop, Laura. So the homework for the next one is using the design idea sheet, which is the third sheet that was given out. Write down your entire idea that you have, the theme that you want to use for it, the objective needed to complete the game, and the actions, mechanics, and pieces that we'll need to be able to do all of these. And finally, as the last part, come up with a very basic plan as to how you're actually going to make this. So this is your homework for next week. Do we have any questions from anyone in the 3 minutes we have left? I'm opening the floor up to everyone now. Is it possible to find out if your idea has been done before? Pretty much the best way to do that is look through Board Game Geek and search through different mechanics, search through different themes, all of that kind of thing. Do a Google search for the basic concept you have. See if anything comes up from that. Board game reviews may reveal concepts. Yes. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you found this helpful in your design. Next week is going to be about game design on a budget, how to rapidly iterate, how to make better looking prototype based on free options that are available or cheap options that are available, and how to continually make changes and improve on your design. Thank you everyone for attending today, and keep designing, guys. It's how we get better games. Thank you.